Have you ever been completely underestimated by the people who should believe in you most? I stood there, my expensive leather portfolio clutched against my chest, feeling the heat of 20 pairs of eyes boring into me as my aunt's cutting voice sliced through the room like a hot knife through butter. "This is an executive meeting, Jessica. Family executives only." The way she emphasized that last word made it crystal clear that in her mind, I'd never qualify. Little did she know, I wasn't just part of the family business. I owned the company they were desperately trying to acquire. But before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Jessica Miller. I come from a long line of furniture makers, craftspeople who built their reputation on quality, sustainability, and timeless design. Our family business, Miller Family Furniture, was started by my grandfather in his garage over 50 years ago. He built each piece by hand, putting his heart into every joint and finish. My father followed in his footsteps, expanding the business while maintaining its soul. That was before everything changed. The first signs of trouble came 6 months ago when Dad suffered a severe stroke. One moment he was reviewing quarterly projections in his office. The next he was being rushed to Riverside Community Hospital, his future uncertain. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about his recovery, but the timeline stretched into months, not weeks. Someone needed to step in and lead the company during his absence. Logically, that someone should have been me. I'd practically grown, up in the workshop, learning the grain of different woods before I could spell their names. After getting my business degree, I'd launched a furniture blog that had grown into a successful e-commerce platform. I understood both our heritage and the digital future we needed to embrace. But logic rarely governs family dynamics, does it? Instead, my Aunt Susan, Dad's older sister who had worked in operations for years, assumed the interim CEO position, with the board's blessing. "Jessica is too inexperienced," she told them. "Miller Furniture needs steady leadership during this crisis, not experimental ideas." And so began my systematic exclusion from the company that was as much a part of me as the color of my eyes. I arrive at headquarters 15 minutes early for the acquisition meeting. The building still bears the classic lines my grandfather preferred: lots of natural light, warm wood accents, and large windows overlooking the production facility. But inside, Susan has already left her mark. Gone are the vintage Miller pieces that once graced the lobby, replaced by chrome and glass furniture that could have come from any corporate catalog. Even the receptionist desk, a magnificent red oak masterpiece my father crafted, has been relegated to storage. "Good morning, Jessica," says Jamie, the receptionist who started as a summer intern the same year I did. "Here for the meeting?" "Yes," I say, adjusting my blazer, navy blue with subtle pinstripes, professional but not showy. "Conference room A, right?" Jamie nods, then leans forward slightly. "Your aunt's been in a mood all morning. The modern heritage acquisition has her stressed." She glances around before adding, "Between us, I think the numbers don't work, but she's determined to make it happen." I thank her and head for the elevator, a small smile playing at my lips. Jamie has no idea how right she is about those numbers. The hallway leading to conference room A is lined with photographs. The company's history in black and white and sepia. My grandfather standing proudly in front of his first workshop. My father accepting an industry award in 1998. Susan at the opening of our second location. Conspicuously absent is any sign of my contributions to the family legacy. I take a deep breath and push open the heavy wooden door. 20 heads turn in unison. The long oak conference table, one of my grandfather's early masterpieces, is surrounded by board members, department heads, and consultants. At the head sits Susan, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a severe bun, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviews a document. My Uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother who oversees manufacturing, offers a tight smile. My cousin Ryan, Susan's son who was fast-tracked into management despite his mediocre business degree, barely looks up from his tablet. "Jessica," Susan says, her voice carrying that particular tone she reserves for me, part confusion, part dismissal. "This is an executive meeting. Family executives only." She gestures toward the door with her Mont Blanc pen. "We're discussing the acquisition. Perhaps the front desk needs help with the phones." The flush creeps up my neck as I notice several board members shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The suggestion that I, with my business degree and successful company, should answer phones hangs in the air like stale perfume. "I thought I might contribute some ideas about the modern heritage integration," I say, voice steadier than I feel. "Their sustainable manufacturing approach aligns with our original—" "Sweetie," Susan interrupts, her smile not reaching her eyes. "This is business. Real business. Not a little online furniture blog. When you have actual experience running something besides an Instagram account, we'll reconsider." Uncle Robert winces but remains silent as always. The junior executives, most, hired by Susan in the last 6 months, exchange glances ranging from embarrassment to poorly concealed amusement. The crystal water glasses on the polished oak table catch the morning light, casting prism-like shadows across the quarterly reports that I know show declining revenues under Susan's leadership. "Maybe next time," Ryan offers weakly as I back. Out of the room, the door closing with a soft, expensive click. In the silent hallway, I lean against the wall, letting the cool surface steady me. This dismissal is just the latest in a long history. I was 19 when Mom died from cancer, leaving Dad heartbroken and me to essentially raise my younger brother Michael while finishing college. Susan stepped in as family support, which mostly meant criticizing my caregiving skills, my education choices, and later, my career direction. "Furniture design is a hobby, Jessica, not a profession," she'd say at family dinners, while praising Ryan's business degree from state, conveniently ignoring my scholarship to Rhode Island School of Design. When I launched my blog documenting the restoration of vintage Miller pieces, Susan called it cute. When it gained traction with over 100,000 monthly readers, she called it lucky. When I expanded into e-commerce with my own designs inspired by our family's craftsmanship traditions, she called it unsustainable. 5 years of building my business, establishing my own furniture line, developing manufacturing relationships across 3 states, all while being talked over at Thanksgiving dinner and excluded from business discussions that had been family traditions since my grandfather started Miller Furniture. The elevator descends smoothly to the ground floor, my reflection fractured in its brass panels. I straighten my blazer, the one I spent 2 weeks' worth of early blog earnings on years ago, when I still thought dressing the part might make a difference to Susan. Outside, the California sun is blinding after the dimmed lighting of the office. I slide on my sunglasses and check my phone. 3 missed calls from Marcus Peterson, my attorney, and a text confirming our 2 p.m. meeting to finalize the paperwork prior to tomorrow's announcement. What Susan doesn't know could fill our company's 50,000 square foot warehouse. She doesn't know that while she was steering Miller Furniture toward cheap overseas manufacturing, I was building relationships with local artisans who still valued craftsmanship. While she was focused on mass market appeal, I was cultivating a devoted following of sustainability-minded consumers with disposable income. While she was cutting costs on quality to boost quarterly profits, I was investing in the very craftsmanship, values that made the Miller name respected for generations. My little blog became a platform, then a small business, then a legitimate competitor with 37 employees and manufacturing partnerships in 3 states. Last year, Modern Heritage Designs, a mid-sized manufacturer of eco-friendly, high-end furniture, approached me about a collaboration. 3 months ago, they approached me about acquisition, impressed by my vision and digital presence. 1 month later, I secured financing to buy them instead. I sit in my car in the executive parking lot, air conditioning blasting against the riverside heat. My finger hovers over Marcus's contact information. One call could accelerate the timeline. We could announce the acquisition today instead of tomorrow, right before Susan signs a competing offer that would drain Miller Family Furniture's already precarious cash reserves. Part of me, the part that still feels like the 19-year-old girl scrambling to care for her brother while being told she wasn't doing it right, wants to storm back into that conference room and reveal everything. To see the shock on Susan's face, to watch Ryan's jaw drop, to finally be seen. But another part hesitates. Dad always said business decisions made from emotion rarely end well. Strategy beats spite every time, Jesse, he'd tell me, while sanding a table edge to perfect smoothness. Despite everything, Miller Furniture is still the company my grandfather built, the legacy my father dedicated his life to preserving. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I place my phone on the passenger seat. There's a better way to handle this. 2 hours later, I sit across from Marcus in his downtown office, reviewing the final acquisition papers for Modern Heritage Designs. The afternoon light filters through his window blinds, casting alternating patterns of light and shadow across the document that represents years of work. "You're sure about this timeline?" he asks, adjusting his glasses. At 53, Marcus has been my attorney since I incorporated my blog into a proper business 4 years ago. He believed in me when most just saw a young woman with an expensive degree and a website. "We could move forward today if you wanted maximum impact." I shake my head. "We stick to the original plan. Tomorrow morning, after Miller's board meeting. They need to officially vote on their offer first." Marcus raises an eyebrow. "That's surprisingly merciful." "It's not mercy," I correct. Him, tucking a strand of brown hair behind my ear. "It's strategy. I want the board to go on record with their decision before they know about mine." It speaks to judgment. I sign the final document, the pen moving smoothly across the heavy paper. And I want Susan to understand this wasn't an emotional reaction. This was a business decision years in the making. That evening, I visit Dad at the rehabilitation center. His room overlooks a small garden, and the evening light bathes everything in a gentle gold. He's sitting in his wheelchair by the window, a book open but unread in his lap. The right side of his face still droops, slightly, and his right arm rests uselessly in his lap. But his eyes, those bright blue eyes that all us Millers share, light up when I enter. "Big day tomorrow," I say, kissing his cheek. His speech is still halting, each word deliberate. "You ready?" I nod, taking his good hand in mine. "Everything's in place. I just hope." I trail off, unsure how to articulate the complexity of my feelings. Dad squeezes my hand. Susan means well. I bite back the argument that rises automatically to my lips. We've had this conversation before. Dad has always seen the best in his sister, even when her actions hurt others. Even when those others were his children. She'll understand. Eventually, he says with effort. I'm not so sure, but I nod anyway. Modern Heritage is going to be good for us, for the Miller legacy. Your mother would be proud, he says, his eyes growing misty. I am so proud. I swallow the lump in my throat. I just want to do right by you, by Grandpa's vision. He nods slowly. You are the future. Susan is the past. He pauses, gathering strength for his next words. She doesn't see it yet. She will, I promise. Tomorrow. The next morning dawns clear and hot, typical for Riverside in June. I dress carefully in a tailored charcoal suit, a vintage Miller furniture pin, my grandfather's, secured at my lapel. The small carved oak leaf had been his signature, incorporated into his earliest designs. My phone buzzes constantly with updates from Marcus, who's in position at Miller headquarters. Board voted unanimously on modern heritage acquisition offer. Susan presenting acquisition strategy now. Projections look inflated. Your car service is confirmed for 10:15 arrival. I check my reflection one last time. At 28, I look younger than I feel, but there's a confidence in my eyes that wasn't there when I started this journey. I apply a final touch of lip gloss, professional, not flashy, and head downstairs where the car is waiting. At precisely 10:30, I walk through the lobby of Miller Family Furniture for the second time in 2 days. This time, Jamie doesn't direct me to the waiting area. "They're all upstairs," she says with a knowing smile. "Conference room A, same as yesterday." The elevator ride feels different today. When the doors open, Marcus is waiting in the hallway, contract portfolio in hand. "Ready?" he asks. I take a deep breath, thinking of my grandfather's hands guiding mine as we sanded a small stool together, of my father's patient explanations of joinery techniques, of my mother's encouragement when I showed artistic talent. I think of all the holidays where Susan dismissed my business while praising Ryan's minor accomplishments, of Uncle Robert's silent complicity, of the Miller legacy slowly being dismantled in favor of quarterly profits. "Ready," I reply. The conference room falls silent as I enter, Marcus 2 steps behind. Susan is mid-sentence at the presentation screen, pointing to projected revenue forecasts for the modern heritage acquisition. Numbers that I know are optimistic at best, fabricated at worst. "Jessica," she says, recovering quickly from her surprise. "This is really not a good time. We're in the middle of the modern heritage acquisition discussion," I finish for her. "That's exactly why I'm here." Robert straightens in his chair. Ryan looks between Susan and me, confusion evident in his expression. The board members, mostly friends of Susan's or distant relatives who rarely visit the production floor, shift uncomfortably. "Marcus Peterson," my attorney introduces himself, placing his business card on the table. "I represent Modern Lineage, LLC, the current owner of Modern Heritage Designs." "That's impossible," Susan laughs, though uncertainty creeps into her voice. "We have an accepted offer as of yesterday." "You had a preliminary acceptance," Marcus corrects, "contingent on final approval from the actual ownership, which was completed last month." I step forward, placing my own portfolio on the table. "Modern Lineage is my company, Susan. I acquired Modern Heritage 4 weeks ago." The silence is absolute. In the corner, I notice Patricia from accounting smiling slightly. She's worked here since my grandfather's day and has watched Susan's management style with increasingly thinned lips. Robert's eyes widen as understanding dawns. "This is ridiculous," Susan sputters, her composure cracking. "You can't possibly have the financing for an acquisition of that size." 7 venture capital firms disagreed, I reply calmly. Plus, the bank that approved leveraging my company's assets, which are considerable. "Your blog?" Ryan asks, genuine curiosity breaking through his usual neutrality. "My design firm, e-commerce platform, and digital media company," I correct him, "which grossed 8 figures last year." Susan turns to Robert, desperation evident in her expression. "This has to be illegal. She's using family information." "All of my information came from publicly available sources and my own industry connections," I cut in. "Connections I built while you were telling everyone my business was just a hobby." The board members exchange glances. I recognize the shift happening, the reassessment, the recalculation. The oldest board member, Mr. Jenkins, who worked with my grandfather decades ago, makes no attempt to hide his smile. Perhaps, he says slowly, we should hear what Ms. Miller has to say about her acquisition and its implications for our company. And so, I present the vision I've developed, the strategies I've implemented, the growth I've achieved. I explain how the Modern Heritage acquisition fits into a larger plan to return Miller Furniture to its roots while embracing sustainable practices and digital marketing. I share numbers, real ones, not inflated projections, about market segments, consumer trends, and manufacturing innovations. Throughout my presentation, I can see the board members' expressions changing, interest replacing skepticism. Even Ryan is taking notes, his earlier confusion transitioning to something like respect. Only Susan remains rigid, her lips pressed into a thin line. When I finish, Mr. Jenkins is the first to speak. I think it's clear we need to reconsider our strategy moving forward. Ms. Miller has presented a compelling vision for the company's future. This is my company, Susan interjects, her voice tight. David put me in charge. Temporarily, I remind her gently. And the board has governance. Responsibilities. I move that we form a transition committee, says another board member, an old friend of my father's, to explore partnership opportunities between Miller Furniture and Ms. Miller's enterprise. I second, adds Mr. Jenkins immediately. As the vote passes with only Susan and two of her closest allies opposed, I can see the future unfolding before me. Not a hostile takeover, but a restoration. A return to what Miller Furniture was meant to be, guided by the values my grandfather established and my father maintained. It won't be easy. Susan won't go quietly. But the first step has been taken, the first recognition achieved. And for now, that's enough. 3 hours after the board meeting, I find myself alone in what used to be my grandfather's workshop. The space has been converted to storage now, filled with dusty prototypes and discontinued models that Susan deemed unmarketable. Running my fingers along a cherry wood dining chair, I recognize my father's handiwork in the subtle curve of the backrest. The craftsmanship speaks of patience, of understanding how wood breathes and lives even after it's been shaped by human hands. The overhead lights flicker on, and I turn to find Ryan standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I've been looking everywhere for you, he says, stepping carefully around a stack of table legs. I thought you might have left after. Everything. Not yet, I reply, continuing my inspection of the chair. There's too much to consider. Ryan nods, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. At 30, he's 2 years older than me. But in this moment, he looks like the uncertain teenager who used to follow me around the workshop during summer breaks, begging to use the power tools our parents had forbidden. I had no idea, he finally says, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. About any of it. How your business grew, the acquisition. None of it. You never asked, I reply simply. He accepts the gentle rebuke with a nod. After Uncle David's stroke, things got complicated. Mom was scared. The company was struggling more than anyone knew. I'm aware of the financials, I say, noting how his eyebrows rise slightly at this. That's part of why I made this move. The company was headed for serious trouble. Ryan hesitates, then asks the question directly. Are you planning to dismantle the company? Sell it off for parts? I study my cousin's face. The family resemblance is there in the blue eyes, the strong jawline. But there's something else I hadn't noticed before. A genuine concern, perhaps even passion, that Susan's domineering presence had always overshadowed. That depends on what's left worth saving, I answer honestly. Ryan's shoulders tense, then relax as he makes some internal decision. I'd like to show you something, he says. In the old warehouse. Something Mom doesn't know about. Curiosity piqued, I follow him through the building, past employees who look at us with undisguised interest. Word travels fast in family businesses. By now, everyone must know about the confrontation in the conference room, even if they don't understand all the implications. We drive separately to the original Miller Furniture Warehouse, a building my grandfather purchased in the 1970s when the company first expanded beyond his garage. Located on the outskirts of town, the aging structure has been used primarily for overflow inventory in recent years. As we pull into the gravel parking lot, memories flood back. Summer days spent sweeping sawdust while my father and grandfather worked, the smell of varnish and possibility in the air. The warehouse is cool and dim, a welcome relief from the June heat. Ryan leads me past rows of inventory stacked on metal shelving, mostly discontinued lines and surplus stock. We walk deeper into the building, toward a section cordoned off by a padlocked chain-link fence. Ryan produces a key from his pocket, the metal catching the sparse overhead light. "I started this about 3 years ago," he says, swinging the gate open, right after Mom began pushing her modernization plan. Inside the fenced area are dozens of original Miller furniture pieces, the handcrafted designs my grandfather and father specialized in, the pieces that built our reputation before Susan's pivot to mass production. Dining sets, rocking chairs, writing desks, bookshelves, all arranged carefully, some partially restored, others waiting their turn. "I've been collecting them whenever I find them," Ryan explains, a hint of pride creeping into his voice. "Buying them back from auctions, estate sales, even Craigslist sometimes. I thought someday we might return to our roots." I run my fingers over a rocking chair my grandfather designed in the 1980s, the wood smooth under my touch. The piece was legendary among furniture makers for its perfect balance and the seamless joinery that required no nails or screws. "Used to have one in our living room when I was small." "You've been restoring these yourself?" I ask, noticing the careful repairs, the perfectly matched stains. Ryan nods. "Nights, weekends. I found Grandpa's old notebooks in the company archives. His techniques, his formulas for stains and finishes." He gestures to a workbench in the corner, tools arranged with meticulous care. "Dad taught me some basics before, but mostly I've been teaching myself." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I ask, genuinely curious. "About any of this?" "Mom has been. Difficult to challenge since Uncle David got sick," he admits, rubbing the back of his neck. "And I didn't have a better vision to offer. Not like you, with your whole company and following. This was just, I don't know, a hobby, I guess." The word hangs between us, loaded with irony. How many times had Susan dismissed my work as just a hobby? I move through the collection, recognizing pieces from my childhood, from the company catalogs I used to pore over. Each one represents a piece of our family's legacy, rescued and preserved by the last person I would have expected. "There's more," Ryan says, leading me to a filing cabinet tucked against the wall. He pulls out a thick binder filled with printouts, sketches, and photographs. I've been documenting everything: original designs, manufacturing techniques, customer stories. The heritage of Miller furniture. I flip through pages of meticulously organized information, material sourcing notes from the 1970s, assembly diagrams, even press clippings about award-winning designs. The level of detail is astonishing. "You did all this while working full-time? At the company?" I ask, unable to keep the surprise from my voice. Ryan shrugs. "Mom had me in meetings all day, but the work wasn't exactly challenging. This," he gestures to the restoration area, "this felt real. Like I was actually contributing something worthwhile." I consider this unexpected revelation, this possible ally I never considered. All these years, I'd written Ryan off as Susan's puppet, someone who benefited from nepotism without earning his place. It never occurred to me that he might be struggling under her control, just as I had been excluded by it. "I'm restructuring the company," I tell him, making a decision I hadn't planned on sharing so soon. "The board has already approved a committee. To explore the integration of modern heritage and Miller furniture, Susan won't be continuing as CEO. He nods, accepting this without protest. What about Dad? And me? Uncle Robert will have options, I say carefully. As for you, I need people who understand both our heritage and where we need to go next. Not yes men, not family tokens. I understand, he says quietly. If you want a place in the new structure, you'll need to earn it, I finish, gesturing to the restoration area around us. Starting with a real business plan for these pieces, how we could integrate traditional craftsmanship with modern manufacturing and marketing. For the first time in years, I see a genuine smile spread across my cousin's face. When can I start? Back at headquarters, the tension is palpable. Susan has locked herself in her office, my father's office, with her lawyers. The boardroom has been commandeered by the transition committee, who have requested financial and operational documents from every department. In the employee break room, conversations stop when I enter, then resume with increased intensity after I leave. I find Patricia from accounting waiting outside the small office I've been allocated for the day. At 62, she's been with Miller Furniture since before I was born, maintaining the books through 3 generations of family leadership. You've caused quite the stir, she says, her gray eyes twinkling behind practical glasses. About time, if you ask me. I didn't plan it this way, I admit, unlocking the office door and gesturing for her to enter. It just evolved. The best plans often do, she replies, settling into a chair and placing a flash drive on the desk between us. I thought you might want this. Financial records for the past 5 years, including some irregularities I've been concerned about. I pick up the drive, turning it over in my palm. Why are you giving me this? Patricia removes her glasses, cleaning them methodically with a cloth from her pocket. Your grandfather gave me my first accounting job when no one would hire a woman without experience. Your father kept me on when others might have replaced me with someone younger. This company has been my life for 40 years. She replaces her glasses and fixes me with a steady gaze. Susan has been making decisions that aren't just bad for business. They're bad for the Miller legacy. I nod, pocketing the drive. Thank you. I'll look into it. One more thing, Patricia says, rising from her chair. Your father kept a secondary office, a small space in the design studio where he would go when he needed to think. Susan doesn't know about it, or if she does, she's never bothered with it. You might want to visit before she thinks to clear it out. The design studio occupies the northwest corner of the building, its wall-to-wall windows capturing the best natural light throughout the day. Once the heart of Miller Furniture's creative process, it's been largely abandoned under Susan's leadership in favor of outsourced designs. The dust covers on drafting tables and the emptiness of the material library speak volumes about the company's shift away from innovation. At the far end of the studio, partially hidden behind a materials storage unit, I find a door with a simple keypad lock. The code, my mother's birthday, comes to me instantly. Inside is a small but thoughtfully arranged space that unmistakably belongs to my father. A drafting table, a comfortable chair, shelves lined with reference books and material samples, and walls covered with design sketches and family photographs. This room has been preserved exactly as he left it 6 months ago, down to the half-empty coffee mug on the desk. Among the photos are many of me that I'd never seen displayed in his main office, receiving my design school acceptance letter, standing proudly beside my first furniture restoration, cutting the ribbon at my blog's first anniversary celebration. He'd been following my career all along, keeping track of my achievements even as Susan dismissed them. On the drafting table sits a leather portfolio, not unlike the one I'd carried into the boardroom yesterday, with a simple note attached. For Jessie, when the time comes. Inside, I find detailed plans for a complete company restructuring. A return to craftsmanship and quality while embracing sustainable practices and digital marketing. Designs for a new showroom concept focusing on the customer experience. Manufacturing innovations that would maintain quality while improving efficiency. Even a succession plan with my name at the top of the organizational chart, dated just 2 weeks before his stroke. He'd been planning to hand the company to me all along. Tears blur my vision as I flip through page after page of my father's meticulous planning, all centered around a vision remarkably similar to what I've developed independently with my own company. He saw the path forward, recognized the value in blending tradition with innovation, understood that I was the one to lead that transition. And now I have the opportunity to fulfill his vision while saving the company he loved. The next morning arrives with a flurry of activity. The transition committee has worked through the night, reviewing documents and preparing recommendations. Susan remains conspicuously absent, though her lawyers have been in and out of meetings with the board's legal counsel. Ryan has submitted a preliminary proposal for a heritage collection division, complete with production estimates and marketing concepts. At 10 o'clock, the board convenes for an emergency session. As the meeting begins, Mr. Jenkins, acting as interim chairman, acknowledges the elephant in the room. Yesterday's revelations have created an unprecedented situation for our company, he states, his voice carrying the weight of his 40 years of board service. Ms. Miller has presented us with both a challenge and an opportunity. The transition committee has spent the past 24 hours evaluating our options, and they've prepared a recommendation for the board's consideration. The committee chair, my father's old friend William Chen, takes the floor. After reviewing the financial position of Miller Furniture, the competitive landscape, and the innovative approach Ms. Miller has demonstrated with her own enterprise, we unanimously recommend a full merger of operations under her leadership. A murmur runs through the room. Even with yesterday's revelations, I hadn't expected such a definitive recommendation so quickly. "This is absurd," interrupts a voice from the doorway. Susan strides into the room, her lawyer trailing behind her. "David placed me in charge of this company during his recovery. The board cannot simply replace me without cause." "We have cause," responds William calmly, sliding a folder across the table. "Financial mismanagement, strategic decisions contrary to shareholder interests, and most concerning, what appears to be systematic efforts to undermine the company's long-term viability in favor of short-term gains that primarily benefited your compensation package." Susan's face pales as she flips through the document. "These are baseless accusations. My brother trusted me to lead this company. Actually," I interject, removing my father's restructuring plan from my bag, "he was planning a transition before his stroke, a transition with me at the helm." As the leather portfolio makes its way around the table, the shift in the room is palpable. Board members who had been hesitant now nod with increasing conviction. Even Susan's few remaining allies seem taken aback by the comprehensiveness of my father's planning. "I believe we have sufficient information to proceed to." "A vote," says Mr. Jenkins, adjusting his glasses. "The proposal before us is to approve the merger of Miller Furniture with Modern Lineage LLC, with Jessica Miller assuming the role of Chief Executive Officer effective immediately." The vote is decisive, 14 in favor, 3 abstentions, and only Susan herself opposed. "This isn't over," she hisses as she gathers her things. "Family businesses don't survive this kind of coup." "This isn't a coup, Susan," I reply, keeping my voice level. "It's a rescue, and family businesses survive when they remember what family truly means: supporting each other's strengths, not exploiting each other's vulnerabilities." As she storms out, the weight of everything that's happened in the past 48 hours finally hits me. I'm now responsible for not just my own company, but my family's legacy. Dozens of employees, generations of craftsmanship, and the future of the Miller name in the furniture industry. Mr. Jenkins approaches, extending his hand. "Your grandfather would be proud," he says simply. "He always said the future of this company would be determined by those who understood both its roots and its branches. The first week passes in a blur of meetings, facility tours, and difficult conversations. Some of Susan's recent hires resign rather than adapt to the new direction. Others, particularly in the design and manufacturing departments, embrace the changes with enthusiasm. Uncle Robert, freed from his sister's shadow, reveals an unexpected talent for sustainability initiatives, identifying ways to reduce waste and improve material sourcing. Ryan's Heritage Collection proposal becomes the cornerstone of our new product strategy. We'll maintain a line of moderately priced contemporary pieces while reintroducing the handcrafted designs that built the Miller reputation, now enhanced, with sustainable materials and modern functionality. His restoration project in the warehouse becomes an official company program with a dedicated team and budget. I divide my time between the Miller headquarters and my own company's offices, beginning the complex process of integration. The cultures are different. Miller traditional and somewhat hierarchical, modern lineage more collaborative and digitally focused. But the core values of quality and craftsmanship provide common ground. One evening, as I'm reviewing space allocation, for the combined operations, Jamie knocks on my office door. My office now, not my father's or Susan's, a space I've already begun making my own. "There's someone here to see you," she says. "He doesn't have an appointment, but..." She glances over her shoulder, then lowers her voice. "It's Michael." My younger brother steps into the office, looking both familiar and strange. At 23, he's in his final year of engineering school in Boston, and I haven't seen him in person since Christmas. Susan has always had more influence over him than me, positioning herself as a maternal figure after our mother died, and subtly driving a wedge between us over the years. "Mikey," I say, rising from my desk, "this is a surprise." He stands awkwardly just inside the doorway, hands shoved into the pockets of his jeans. "Aunt Susan called me," he says without preamble. "She said you staged some kind of hostile takeover, that Dad would be devastated if he knew." The accusation stings, but I keep my expression neutral. "Did you talk to Dad about it?" Michael shifts his weight from one foot to the other. "Not yet. I wanted to hear your side first." I gesture to the chair across from my desk. "I appreciate that." For the next hour, I explain everything. My business growth, the modern heritage acquisition, the financial state of Miller Furniture, under Susan's leadership and Dad's own succession plans. I show him the portfolio with our father's notes and sketches, the projections for the merged companies, even the heritage collection Ryan has been preserving. "So all those years you were working on your blog," Michael says slowly, "you were actually building something bigger, something that could save the family business." I nod. Not intentionally at first, but eventually, yes. "And Aunt Susan knew the company was in trouble?" "The numbers don't lie," I say, pulling up the financial reports Patricia provided. She was making decisions that prioritized short-term profits over long-term stability. Maybe she thought she could turn things around before Dad returned. Or maybe she just didn't understand the industry well enough to see the consequences. I don't know her motivations, only the results. Michael studies the data, his engineering mind processing the trends and projections. "Dad really planned to make you CEO?" "Apparently so," I reply, though he never got the chance to tell me directly. My brother is quiet for a long moment, absorbing everything. Finally, he looks up, his expression serious. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. When you were building your company, when Dad got sick, I should have been more present. You were finding your own path," I say gently. "That's important too." "Still," he insists, "I let Aunt Susan color my perception. She always made it sound like your business was just a phase, something you'd grow out of eventually." I laugh softly at the familiar refrain. She's been saying that for years. "Well, she was wrong," Michael says firmly, "and I was wrong to listen to her." He pauses, then adds, I have an internship lined up for the summer, but maybe I could help with the merger in some way? My program focuses on sustainable engineering. There might be applications for furniture manufacturing. The olive branch is unexpected, but welcome. I think we could find a place for you, I say, smiling. The new Miller Furniture Group will need fresh perspectives. That night, I visit Dad at the rehabilitation center, bringing dinner from his favorite Italian restaurant. His recovery is slow but steady. His speech less halting now, some movement returning to his right side. The doctors are optimistic about his eventual return home, though his role at the company will likely be advisory rather than operational. Susan came by, he says as I unpack the food containers. Very upset. I imagine so, I reply, arranging his silverware within easy reach of his left hand. She says you stole her company. I look up, meeting his gaze. Your company, I correct him. And I didn't steal it. I saved it. Dad reaches for my hand with his good one, his grip surprisingly strong. I know. His blue eyes, so like mine, shine with emotion. Saw what was happening, couldn't stop it, tried to plan. Then this. He gestures to his weakened right side. I found your portfolio, I tell him. Your succession plan. He nods. Should have told you sooner. My fault. It doesn't matter now, I assure him. What matters is where we go from here. We eat together in comfortable silence, the weight of unspoken words gradually lifting. After dinner, I show him pictures of Ryan's heritage collection and sketches for the new showroom concept that combines elements from both companies. You'll do better than I did, Dad says as I prepare to leave. Stronger, smarter. I had a good teacher, I reply, kissing his cheek. Outside in the hospital parking lot, I pause to look up at the evening sky. Stars are just beginning to appear, twinkling against the deepening blue. 6 months ago, I stood in this same spot after Dad's stroke, terrified about what the future might hold for him, for me, for the family legacy. I couldn't have imagined then how everything would unfold, how crisis would become opportunity, how exclusion would lead to leadership. The road ahead won't be easy. There are still legal complexities to the merger, employee concerns to address, and family wounds to heal. Susan's threat that this isn't over may prove true in ways I haven't yet anticipated. The furniture industry itself faces challenges from changing consumer preferences to supply chain disruptions. But for the first time since that day 6 months ago, I'm not afraid of the future. I'm ready for it. As I slide behind the wheel of my car, my phone rings. Ryan, calling with an update on the Heritage Collection inventory. Another unexpected ally in this new chapter of the Miller family story. I answer with a smile, ready to build something that will last. 6 weeks into the merger, I find myself standing in the newly renovated showroom floor, watching as workers install the final display, a dining set from our Heritage Collection paired with contemporary lighting from modern lineage. The juxtaposition works beautifully, the warm wood tones complemented by the sleek, sustainable design of the pendant lamps. It's exactly the vision I'd tried to articulate in that boardroom when Susan dismissed me. What do you think? Ryan asks, appearing at my side with 2 cups of coffee. He passes one to me, the steam rising in the early morning light that streams through the windows. I think Grandpa would approve, I reply, accepting the cup gratefully. Sleep has become a luxury since taking over as CEO, my days filled with integration meetings and my nights with design reviews and marketing plans. Ryan nods, surveying the space. Under his direction, the showroom has been transformed. Gone are the sterile catalog-like displays Susan preferred, replaced by thoughtfully arranged vignettes that tell a story about how furniture becomes part of a family's life. Each piece includes a small plaque detailing its history, materials, and the artisans involved in its creation. The opening's going to be big, he says. We've already got RSVPs from 3 design magazines and that sustainability blogger you like. Maya Rodriguez? She's coming? Ryan smiles. Apparently your reputation precedes you. She said she's been following your work for years. This small victory, recognition from a respected voice in sustainable design, means more than I care to admit. For so long, I'd sought validation from my family while building external credibility. Now, ironically, that external credibility is what's helping rebuild family connections. Have you heard from your mother? I ask, keeping my tone casual, though we both know it's anything but. Ryan's smile fades. Still radio silence. Dad says she's staying with her sister in San Diego, refusing to take his calls most days. I nod, unsurprised but still disappointed. Susan's departure had been as dramatic as her leadership. Accusations hurled, legal threats made, personal belongings removed from her office in the dead of night. The board had been generous with her severance package, acknowledging her years of service while firmly establishing the company's new direction. She'll come around, I say, though neither of us believes it. Or she won't. Either way, we keep moving forward. My phone buzzes with a calendar alert, a reminder of today's meeting with Westside Senior Living, a potential major client interested in furnishing their new facility with our sustainable, ergonomic designs. The contract would be significant, not just financially, but as validation of our integrated approach. I should go prepare, I say, finishing my coffee. The design team's meeting me at 10 to review the presentation. About that, Ryan begins, his expression turning serious. I've been looking at their portfolio, and I think we should lead with the adaptive pieces from your line, rather than the standard senior options. The ergonomics are better, and the aesthetics don't scream old people furniture. I raise an eyebrow, impressed by his insight. In the weeks since the merger, Ryan has revealed depths I never suspected. Not just his passion for restoration, but a genuine understanding of design principles and consumer psychology. Without Susan's shadow, he's flourishing in ways that remind me of my father at his best. Good call, I agree. Have marketing update the presentation and see if we can get prototypes of the adjustable side table into the sample room before they arrive. As Ryan heads off to make the arrangements, I take a moment to appreciate how far we've come in such a short time. The merger, which could have been chaotic and divisive, has instead energized both companies. My team from Modern Lineage has brought fresh perspectives and digital expertise, while the Miller craftspeople have shared generations of woodworking knowledge. Together, we're creating something neither company could have achieved alone. My phone rings. Jamie, now serving as my executive assistant while maintaining her receptionist duties until we can hire additional staff. Jessica, your father's car just pulled into the parking lot, she says, surprise evident in her voice. He's with Dr. Phillips. My heart skips a beat. Dad has been making progress in his rehabilitation, but this is his first visit to headquarters since his stroke. I'll be right down. In the lobby, I find my father seated in a wheelchair, his rehabilitation doctor standing beside him. Though still weakened on his right side, Dad looks more like himself than he has in months. His color better, his posture straighter, his eyes clear and alert. Surprise inspection, he says, his speech careful but much improved. Wanted to see what you've done with the place. I kneel beside his chair, taking his good hand in mine. You should have called. We would have prepared. He shakes his head. Wanted to see the real thing, not a show. Dr. Phillips explains that this outing is part of Dad's therapy, a controlled return to familiar environments to stimulate cognitive function and emotional well-being. They can stay for an hour, with rest breaks as needed. Would you like a tour? I offer, already mentally plotting the most accessible route through the building. Dad nods, determination evident in the set of his jaw. Show me everything. For the next hour, I guide him through the transformed space, the revitalized design studio now humming with activity, the marketing department with its digital displays, tracking our online engagement, the executive offices where transparency has replaced hierarchy with glass walls and collaborative spaces. Employees stop to greet him warmly, updating him on projects and personal news with genuine affection. When we reach the production floor, Dad asks to be wheeled along the line, greeting each craftsperson by name, examining works in progress with the expert eye that decades of experience have honed. Despite his physical limitations, his observations are as sharp as ever. The joining on that cabinet. Too tight, he notes, gesturing to a piece nearing completion. Wood will expand. In humidity. The young artisan working on it, someone hired since Dad's stroke, looks startled, then thoughtful as he reconsiders the joint. You're right, sir. I'll adjust it. Thank you. By the time we reach the new showroom, fatigue is evident in the slight droop of Dad's shoulders, but his eyes remain bright as he takes in the transformed space. The Heritage Collection, he murmurs, wheeling himself toward the display of restored Miller classics. You found them. Ryan did, I correct him. He's been collecting and restoring them for years. It's becoming one of our most pre-ordered lines. Dad's expression softens. Susan's boy always had talent. She couldn't see. The observation is so close to my own recent realization that I feel a pang of empathy for my cousin. How many years had he spent trying to earn validation from a mother constitutionally incapable of providing it? When we reach the dining set being installed, a reproduction of my grandfather's first major commission, now paired with contemporary elements, Dad falls silent, his good hand reaching out to trace the grain of the table's edge. This is right, he finally says, his voice stronger than it's been all day. This is Miller furniture. By the time Dr. Phillips indicates they need to leave, a small crowd of employees has gathered, drawn by word of Dad's visit. As he's wheeled toward the exit, they form an impromptu honor guard, silent but respectful. In their faces, I see what Dad built beyond the furniture, a community, a shared purpose, a legacy worth preserving. You've done good, Jesse, Dad says as we reach the door, better than I hoped. The simple validation, so long sought, so freely given now, fills a space inside me I hadn't realized was still empty. After they leave, I find myself drawn to the small office Dad kept in the design studio, the one Patricia told me about weeks ago. In the rush of the merger, I've had little time to fully explore his private workspace, though I've preserved it, exactly as he left it. Sitting at his drafting table, I open the drawer where I found his succession portfolio. Beneath it lies a small wooden box I hadn't noticed before, carved from cherry wood with the Miller oak leaf inlaid in walnut. Inside, I find a collection of family photographs, notes in my mother's handwriting, and a small velvet pouch. The pouch contains a necklace, a silver pendant in the shape of the Miller oak leaf, suspended on a delicate chain. I recognize it immediately from photos of my mother, though I'd never known what happened to it after her death. A small card, tucked into the pouch, bears my father's handwriting. For Jessica, when she takes her rightful place at Miller Furniture. Tears blur my vision as I fasten the necklace around my neck, the familiar weight of family history settling against my collarbone. In this small, sunlit room, surrounded by my father's designs and my mother's memory, the past and future of Miller Furniture feel perfectly aligned for the first time in years. The moment of peace is interrupted by a knock at the door. Michael stands in the doorway, a tablet tucked under his arm, his expression uncertain. Jamie said I'd find you here, he says. Is this a bad time? I wipe away tears, gesturing for him to enter. Just having a moment. Dad visited today. Michael's eyes widen. How was he? Better than expected, I reply, touching the pendant at my throat. Definitely still Dad. My brother nods, relief evident in his shoulders. Since our conversation 6 weeks ago, he's been dividing his time between finishing his degree requirements remotely and developing sustainability initiatives for the merged company. His engineering perspective has already identified several ways to reduce our environmental footprint while improving production efficiency. "I think I've solved the waste issue in the veneer process," he says, activating his tablet and pulling up a series of diagrams. "If we modify the cutting sequence and implement this collection system, we can reduce scrap by almost 40%. As he walks me through his proposal, I'm struck by how naturally he stepped into his role. Like Ryan, he seems to have found his voice once freed from Susan's influence. Unlike me, who had to leave to build my own path, Michael and Ryan are discovering theirs by coming back with fresh eyes. "This is brilliant, Mikey," I say when he finishes. "Have you shown it to the production team?" He nods, a hint of pride coloring his features. "They're running a test sequence tomorrow. If it works as projected, we could implement it company-wide within a month. And the cost savings? Roughly $85,000 annually, plus potential revenue from selling the reclaimed material to small-scale artisans." I can't help but smile at his thoroughness. Dad would be impressed. Michael glances around the small office, taking in the drawings and models that represent our father's creative process. I never really understood before what this company meant to him, to our family. Susan always made it sound like a burden he was carrying, something he'd gladly set aside if he could. That was her perspective, I say carefully. She saw the stress and the responsibility, but missed the passion and the purpose. "Like she did with your business," Michael observes. "Always focusing on the risks, never the possibilities." The insight surprises me. Not the observation itself, but that it's coming from Michael, who for years had accepted Susan's narrative without question. "Speaking of possibilities," he continues, "there's something else I wanted to discuss." He hesitates, uncharacteristically nervous. "I've been thinking about my future after graduation. I know we talked about me joining the company part-time, but you want to explore other options," I finish for him, trying to mask my disappointment. "I understand. You should build your own path like I did." "No," he corrects me quickly. "I want to commit fully to Miller Furniture, to what we're building here." I study my brother's face, searching for signs of obligation or uncertainty. "Are you sure? There's a world of opportunities out there for someone with your skills." Michael meets my gaze steadily. "I'm sure. What we're doing here, merging tradition with innovation, craftsmanship with sustainability, it matters. And being part of a family legacy, one we're actively redefining rather than just inheriting, that matters too." His words echo my own journey, though his path to this realization has been very different from mine. Where I had to fight for recognition, he's been offered it freely. Where I had to leave to find my voice, he's discovering his by staying. "We'd be lucky to have you," I tell him sincerely. "Though I should warn you, family businesses are complicated." Michael laughs, the sound warming the small space. "I think we've noticed that." The next day brings the meeting with Westside Senior Living. Their delegation arrives promptly at 10. The facility's director, their lead architect, and the CEO herself, Catherine Westwood, a formidable woman in her 60s whose retirement communities have won awards for both luxury and accessibility. Ryan leads them through the showroom, highlighting the adaptive features and sustainable materials of our integrated collection. I join them for the formal presentation, where Michael demonstrates his new material recovery system and its environmental benefits. The entire experience showcases not just our products but our process, the thoughtful integration of tradition and innovation that defines the new Miller Furniture Group. "I must say, this is not what I expected," Catherine admits as we conclude. In the conference room, the afternoon light lending a warm glow to the prototype pieces we've arranged for their inspection. When we scheduled this meeting, Miller Furniture had a very different reputation. We've undergone significant changes recently, I acknowledge. A return to our roots while embracing the future. Catherine picks up a material sample, running, her fingers over the reclaimed wood finish. My residents don't want to feel like they're living in a hospital, no matter how upscale. They want beauty, craftsmanship, sustainability, without sacrificing function. She places the sample down decisively. You're offering all three. By the time they leave, we've secured not just a contract for their Riverside location, but potential partnerships for 3 additional facilities planned over the next 2 years. It's a significant win for the merged company, validation of our integrated approach, and precisely the kind of high-profile project that will attract attention from other commercial clients. The celebration that follows is spontaneous and genuine. Staff from both original companies mingling in the break room, sharing ideas and enthusiasm. I watch from the doorway as Ryan distributes champagne and Michael unveils the sustainability impact chart for the West Side project. The camaraderie between them now easy and natural. Quite the transformation, says a voice beside me. I turn to find Patricia, a knowing smile on her face. Which part? I ask, gesturing to the celebrating employees. All of it, she replies. The company, the culture, your cousin and brother. She pauses, her expression softening. And you. You've come into your own, Jessica. The observation catches me off guard. In the whirlwind of the past weeks, I've had little time to reflect on my own journey. From excluded family member to CEO, from seeking validation to providing vision. I had good examples, I say, thinking of my grandfather's craftsmanship, my father's integrity, even my mother's quiet strength during her illness. And some counterexamples, too. Patricia nods, understanding the reference to Susan without needing elaboration. Speaking of which, she says, lowering her voice, I thought you should know. Susan's been meeting with Harvey Donovan. The name sends a chill through me despite the warm evening. Harvey Donovan is the CEO of Donovan Designs, our largest competitor and a company known for aggressive tactics in acquiring smaller firms. Before the merger, there had been rumors of his interest in Miller Furniture, interest Susan had publicly dismissed, while according to the financial records Patricia provided, secretly encouraging. Recently? I ask, keeping my voice steady. Yesterday, Patricia confirms, at the Riverside Country Club. My sister's husband is on the membership committee. He saw them together in a private dining room for over 2 hours. The information isn't entirely surprising. Susan had made it clear she considered the merger a personal betrayal. But it is concerning. Though she no longer has an operational role at Miller Furniture, she remains connected to industry players and knows our vulnerabilities. Thank you for telling me, I say, already mentally reviewing our contracts and client relationships for potential weak points. Patricia pats my arm reassuringly. Just stay vigilant. Susan's always underestimated. That's her biggest weakness. The party continues around us, the team celebrating not just today's contract, but the successful integration of 2 companies into something stronger than either had been alone. Looking at their faces, animated, engaged, proud, I feel a surge of protective determination. Whatever Susan might be planning with Harvey Donovan, I won't let it threaten what we've built. That evening, I stay late in my office, reviewing our position. The merger has strengthened us significantly, bringing complementary skills and resources together, but we're still vulnerable in key areas. Our supply chain for sustainable materials is still developing. Our manufacturing capacity is strained by the increased demand for heritage pieces. And though our digital presence has grown exponentially, our brick-and-mortar distribution network is limited compared to larger competitors like Donovan Designs. My concentration is interrupted by a gentle knock. Ryan stands in the doorway, holding a folder. Thought you might want to see this before tomorrow's executive meeting, he says, crossing to my desk. I've been working on an expansion proposal for the Heritage Collection. The folder contains detailed plans for scaling our reproduction and restoration capabilities, training programs for new artisans, sourcing strategies for period-appropriate materials, even a community workshop concept where customers could learn basic restoration techniques themselves. This is comprehensive, I say, impressed by the depth of his research. And the apprenticeship program is brilliant. Ryan shrugs, though I can see he's pleased by the praise. It addresses our capacity issues while preserving the craftsmanship. That makes the collection special. And it creates jobs that can't be easily outsourced. You've really thought this through. He hesitates, then says, I want to make sure we're building something that lasts, something worthy of the Miller name. The sentiment echoes my own aspirations so closely that I feel a sudden kinship with my cousin that transcends our complicated family history. For all our differences, for all the years of distance and misunderstanding, we share this fundamental value. I've been thinking about the name, actually, I say, gesturing for him to sit. Miller Furniture Group is functional, but not particularly inspiring. We need something that honors our heritage while embracing our integrated future. Ryan considers this, leaning back in his chair. What about simply Miller Heritage? It acknowledges where we came from while leaving room for where we're going. The suggestion resonates immediately. Simple, authentic, forward-looking, while respectful of the past. Exactly the balance we're trying to strike with the company itself. Miller Heritage, I repeat, testing how the words feel. I like it. Our conversation shifts to implementation details, how to phase in the new name, update branding, communicate the change to clients and partners. It's nearly midnight when we finally wrap up, both energized despite the late hour. As Ryan leaves, he pauses in the doorway. I heard about Mom meeting with Donovan, he says quietly. Patricia told me. I'm not surprised that Patricia shared the information with him as well. She's been looking out for the Miller family for decades, in ways both seen and unseen. Are you okay with me knowing? He asks, his expression guarded. The question reveals how far we've come in rebuilding trust. 2 months ago, Ryan would have been caught between loyalties, possibly even defensive of his mother's actions. Now he's acknowledging the potential threat while respecting my position as CEO. I'm glad you know, I assure him. We need to be unified if we're going to handle whatever comes next. He nods, relieved. For what it's worth, I don't think she can hurt us much. Her knowledge is already outdated, and Donovan's smart enough to realize that. I hope you're right, I reply, but we'll prepare either way. After he leaves, I find myself drawn to the window overlooking the production floor, where a skeleton crew works through the night to fulfill orders for our increasingly popular heritage pieces. The rhythm of their movements, the careful sanding, the precise measurements, the respectful handling of materials, speaks to continuity and purpose beyond quarterly profits or market position. Whatever Susan might be planning with Harvey Donovan, she fundamentally misunderstands what makes Miller Furniture valuable. It isn't just the assets or the client list or the brand recognition. It's the knowledge passed from craftsperson to apprentice, the designs that improve with each iteration, the relationships built on trust and quality over decades. It's taken me years to fully appreciate this truth, that our greatest strength lies not in what we have, but in who we are. Susan never understood that, but I do. And increasingly, so do Ryan and Michael. Tomorrow morning, I'll convene the executive team to discuss our vulnerabilities and strengthen our defenses. I'll accelerate our integration timeline and expedite Ryan's heritage expansion plan. I'll have legal review all our contracts and intellectual property protections. But tonight, watching the artisans work with the same care my grandfather showed 50 years ago, I feel a calm certainty that transcends business strategy. What we're building at Miller Heritage is more than a company. It's a community, a purpose, a legacy. And that, ultimately, is what will protect us from whatever storm Susan tries to bring our way. With this resolve, I return to my desk and begin drafting the announcement for our new name. Miller Heritage, crafting tomorrow's legacy today. The words flow easily, a promise and a commitment in equal measure. By morning, we'll have a plan not just to defend what we've built, but to strengthen it. Together. The morning of the Miller Heritage official launch dawns clear and bright. California sunshine streaming through the showroom windows and illuminating the carefully arranged displays. 6 months of intense work have transformed not just the company's name, but its entire identity, inside and out. The building itself has undergone a thoughtful renovation, blending the original architecture with sustainable materials and energy-efficient upgrades. Even the logo has evolved, maintaining the iconic oak leaf while refreshing it with clean contemporary lines. I arrive early, needing a quiet moment before the day's festivities begin. This launch isn't just a rebranding. It's a declaration of purpose and a celebration of resilience. Industry media, local business leaders, longtime customers, and even some competitors have RSVP'd for the event, curious about the dramatic turnaround of a company many had written off as fading into irrelevance. In the quiet showroom, I move from display to display, adjusting a table setting here, straightening a chair there. Each vignette tells a story, not just about furniture, but about homes and lives and memories created around these pieces. A nursery corner features a rocking chair reproduced from my grandfather's original design, now crafted from sustainable maple with non-toxic finishes safe for babies. A home office showcases a desk that integrates modern technology with timeless craftsmanship, charging ports hidden within dovetailed drawers. A dining area presents a table that expands through an ingenious mechanism my father designed decades ago, now updated with contemporary materials. "You're fussing," says a familiar voice. I turn to find my father watching from the entryway, leaning on a handcrafted cane rather than seated in the wheelchair he'd needed during his first visit months ago. His recovery has been remarkable. Not complete, perhaps never will be, but far beyond what his doctors initially predicted. Determination runs in the Miller blood. "Just making sure everything's perfect," I reply, straightening a table runner that didn't need straightening. Dad makes his way slowly toward me, each step deliberate but steady. "You know what your grandfather used to say about perfection? It's the enemy of done," I finish with him, the familiar saying bringing a smile to both our faces. "He also said," Dad continues, reaching the dining table and running his left hand appreciatively over its surface, "that the most beautiful pieces have character. Not flaws, character." The distinction feels important today as we prepare to present our renewed company to the world. Miller Heritage isn't perfect. We're still navigating the complexities of the merger, still balancing tradition with innovation, still healing family fractures. But we have character, purpose, direction. I keep thinking about Susan, I admit, giving voice to the concern that's shadowed the preparations despite all our successes. She's been too quiet since the Donovan meetings. Dad's expression sobers. "Your aunt has always played the long game. Even as kids, she'd wait for the right moment. That's what worries me." He studies my face, then says simply, "You're ready for whatever comes." This company is stronger now than it's been in 20 years. Before I can respond, the main doors open and Ryan enters, followed by the catering staff he's coordinating for the event. At 30, my cousin has grown into his role as Heritage Collection Director with unexpected grace. The restoration skill he developed in secret has blossomed into genuine leadership, his quiet passion for craftsmanship earning respect from artisans decades his senior. "We've got a situation with the media setup," he says, crossing to us. "The AV team needs access to the mezzanine, but security is saying it's not in the approved areas." Dad chuckles. "I'll handle that. Give me something useful to do." As he makes his way toward the security office, I marvel at the shift in family dynamics over these months. Dad has settled comfortably into an advisory role, offering wisdom without needing control. Ryan and Michael have found their voices without Susan's overshadowing presence. And I've learned that leadership doesn't mean having all the answers. It means building a team where everyone contributes their strengths. The morning passes in a blur of last-minute preparations, checking the presentation, confirming the catering, greeting early arrivals. By noon, the showroom hums with activity as guests begin to filter in, greeted by staff members who guide them through the displays while offering insights into the materials, designs, and sustainability practices. In a quiet corner near the heritage display, I spot an unexpected figure, Catherine Westwood from Westside Senior Living, deep in conversation with our lead designer. Their partnership has flourished beyond the initial contract, with Catherine's practical insights into accessibility, informing our new designs and our aesthetic principles, elevating their facilities. "Jessica," she calls, waving me over. "I was just telling Anouk about the resident feedback. The first installations are complete, and we've never had such a positive response." "The ergonomic adjustments make all the difference," Anouk adds, her Dutch accent still strong after 5 years in California. "We're applying what we've learned to the new office collection." The conversation flows easily, professional yet warm, exactly the tone I've worked to establish throughout the company. As I move through the gathering, similar exchanges follow. Industry contacts who once dismissed me now seek my insights. Former competitors explore collaboration possibilities. Longtime customers express appreciation for the return to quality while embracing the sustainable innovations. At 1 o'clock, precisely, Jamie signals that it's time for the formal presentation. I make my way to the small stage we've set up near the main staircase, its backdrop showcasing both original Miller pieces and new designs from the integrated company. Taking my place at the podium, I survey the gathered crowd, over 200. People filling the showroom, their attention focused forward. "Welcome to Miller Heritage," I begin, my voice steadier than I feel. "Some of you knew us as Miller Furniture. Others worked with Modern Lineage. Today, we officially unite these legacies under a name that honors where we've been while committing to where we're going." As I outline our vision, quality craftsmanship, sustainable practices, designs that improve lives, I notice movement at the back of the room. A familiar figure slips through the main entrance, taking a position against the far wall. Susan, dressed impeccably as always, her expression unreadable even from a distance. Beside her stands a middle-aged man whose silver hair and expensive suit mark him immediately as Harvey Donovan. Their presence sends a ripple of tension through me, but I maintain my pace, transitioning smoothly to introduce the executive team, Ryan as Heritage Collection Director, Michael as Sustainability Engineer, the former Modern Lineage executives who've taken on key roles in the merged company. Each steps forward briefly, acknowledging the applause before returning to the line. "And, of course," I continue, "none of this would be possible without the vision of the man who has guided Miller Furniture through decades of excellence. My father, David Miller." The applause swells as Dad joins me at the podium, leaning slightly on his cane but standing tall, his presence commanding despite the physical changes the stroke has left. As the room quiets, he adjusts the microphone. "Some of you have been buying Miller Furniture longer than Jessica has been alive," he begins, his speech careful but clear. "You trusted us with your homes, your offices, your gathering spaces. That trust is sacred." He pauses, his gaze sweeping the room before settling, just for a moment, on Susan at the back. Something passes between the siblings, a recognition, perhaps, or a reckoning. "Times change," Dad continues. "Markets evolve, but quality craftsmanship and integrity never go out of style. What Jessica and her team have built here honors our past while securing our future. I couldn't be prouder of the direction Miller Heritage is taking." The simple endorsement, from father to daughter, from former CEO to current, resonates through the room. As Dad steps back, The crowd's response is immediate and enthusiastic, many rising to their feet in recognition of both his legacy and his graceful transition. I return to the podium for closing remarks, focusing on our upcoming collections and community initiatives rather than dwelling on the emotional significance of the moment. As the formal presentation concludes and guests disperse to explore the displays, I find myself searching the crowd for Susan and Donovan, but they've disappeared, as quietly as they arrived. They left during the standing ovation, Ryan confirms, appearing at my elbow with a glass of water. Mom looked, I don't know, not angry, exactly. Something else. Defeated? I suggest, though that doesn't seem quite right either. Ryan shakes his head. Thoughtful maybe, or resigned. He glances toward the exit. Either way, whatever they were planning, I don't think it's happening today. Let's hope you're right, I reply, though experience has taught me to remain vigilant where Susan is concerned. The launch continues successfully through the afternoon, with demonstrations of sustainable manufacturing techniques, artisan interviews, and guided tours of the facility. By 4 o'clock, the crowd has thinned to the most interested parties, serious clients, media representatives, and industry colleagues. I'm deep in conversation with a reporter from Architectural Digest when Jamie appears at my side. I'm sorry to interrupt, she says quietly, but there's someone asking to speak with you privately, in your father's old office. Something in her tone alerts me that this isn't a routine request. Who is it? Jamie hesitates. Your Aunt Susan. The reporter graciously agrees to continue our conversation later, and I make my way through the showroom toward the executive offices. As I approach what was once my father's domain, now a conference space since I've established my own office elsewhere, I steady myself for whatever confrontation awaits. Susan stands at the window, her back to the door, silhouetted against the late afternoon light. She's removed her jacket, and something about the vulnerability of her bare arms strikes me. This woman who has always presented such a polished, armored exterior to the world. Congratulations, she says without turning. It was quite the presentation. I remain near the doorway, alert for signs of the trap I've been expecting since her meetings with Donovan began. Thank you for coming. Susan turns slowly, and I'm struck by how tired she looks. Not just physically, but emotionally depleted in a way I've never associated with her. Harvey Donovan offered to buy my shares, she says without preamble. This is unexpected. While Susan no longer has an operational role at Miller Heritage, she still holds approximately 15% of the company's shares, a significant but not controlling interest. I declined, she continues, answering my unasked question. He seemed quite surprised. Why? I ask, genuinely curious. You've made it clear you don't support our direction. Susan moves to the conference table, trailing her fingers along its polished surface. A table my grandfather built for his first real office, its simple lines hiding the complex joinery beneath. Do you know why I pushed so hard for modernization? For mass production? The question feels like dangerous territory, but I respond honestly. To increase quarterly profits, to compete with larger manufacturers. To save the company, she corrects, meeting my gaze directly. Your father was so focused on craftsmanship that he couldn't see the market changing around him. Handmade, furniture, traditional methods, they were becoming luxury items, not viable business models. We were hemorrhaging money, Jessica. This perspective is so at odds with my understanding of the company's history that I find myself momentarily speechless. Susan takes my silence as an invitation to continue. When David had his stroke, we were 3/4 away from insolvency. The shift to overseas manufacturing and standardized designs wasn't ideal, but it was necessary. At least, I thought it was. She gestures toward the window where the bustling showroom is visible below. Clearly, I was wrong. The admission, so unexpected, so contrary to Susan's character as I've understood it, leaves me uncertain how to respond. You never said anything about financial troubles. Would you have believed me? She asks, echoing my own words to Ryan months ago. You and David were so aligned in your vision, so convinced of the rightness of your approach. And perhaps you were right in the end, but my motives weren't what you thought. I consider this revelation, trying to reconcile it with the Susan I've known. Dismissive, controlling, status-conscious. Why are you telling me this now? She picks up her jacket from the chair where she'd draped it, running a thumb over the expensive fabric. Harvey offered to buy my shares at 20% above market value. A very generous exit. But watching your presentation today, seeing what you've built... She pauses, choosing her words carefully. I realized I'd rather own 15% of something meaningful than cash out of something I helped destroy. The statement hangs in the air between us, neither apology nor surrender, but something more complex. An acknowledgement, perhaps, of shared purpose despite divergent methods. The company isn't exactly what I would have built, Susan continues, slipping her jacket on with practiced ease. But it's unmistakably Miller, and it's clearly in capable hands. Before I can formulate a response to this unexpected olive branch, the door opens and Ryan enters, his expression wary as he takes in the tableau. His mother and cousin facing each other across the conference table, the weight of years of misunderstanding suspended between them. Mom, he says simply. I thought you'd left. Susan turns to her son, something softening in her features. Not quite yet. I was just telling Jessica that I've declined Donovan's offer for my shares. Ryan's surprise mirrors my own. You're staying invested in Miller Heritage? It seems the sensible choice, she replies, her tone shifting back toward the business-like cadence I associate with her. The company's trajectory is promising. The understatement is so typical of Susan that I almost laugh, transforming what might have been a moment of emotional reconciliation into a practical financial decision. Yet something has undeniably shifted in our dynamic. We're having a small gathering after the launch, I find myself saying. Just family and the executive team. At my place. The invitation surprises me as much as it clearly surprises Susan. She hesitates, glancing between Ryan and me before responding. I appreciate the offer, but I think that would be premature. Some distances take time to cross. The acknowledgement of the gulf between us, and the possibility, however distant, of eventually bridging it, feels like more progress than I'd expected from this encounter. Another time, perhaps, she adds, moving toward the door. Ryan, walk. Me out? As they leave together, I remain in the conference room, processing the unexpected exchange. Susan's revelation about the company's financial state prior to my father's stroke doesn't excuse her treatment of me or her dismissal of my capabilities, but it does complicate the narrative I've constructed. Her motives, while still fundamentally misaligned with my values, weren't as selfishly simple as I'd believed. The realization is both unsettling and oddly liberating. The Susan of my understanding, one-dimensional in her antagonism, has been replaced by someone more complex, more human. Not an ally, certainly, but perhaps no longer an active threat. By the time I return to the showroom, the launch event is winding down. Staff members are beginning the discreet process of tidying, while the remaining guests enjoy final conversations over champagne. I find my father seated near the heritage display, deep in conversation with an elderly gentleman I recognize as one of my grandfather's original clients. There she is, Dad says as I approach, reaching for my hand. Jessica, you remember Mr. Harrington? Of course, I reply, shaking hands with the man who commissioned some of my grandfather's finest work. Your writing desk is still featured in our catalog as the Harrington model. The old man beams. Your grandfather built that desk for my law office in 1975. Still use it every day, even though I'm supposedly retired. Quality like that doesn't come along often. That's what we're trying to preserve, I tell him, settling into the chair beside my father, while making it accessible to more people through sustainable practices and thoughtful manufacturing. Mr. Harrington nods approvingly. David tells me you're opening a community workshop, teaching traditional techniques? Ryan's initiative, I explain, using the Heritage Collection as a platform for education. Classes for everything from basic woodworking to advanced joinery, taught by our master craftspeople. Smart, the older man says. Keeping the knowledge alive, creating advocates for quality. He turns to my father. You've done well, David. Not just with the company, with your children. Dad's expression softens as he looks at me. They've done well with themselves. I just tried not to get too much in the way. The modest assessment doesn't quite align with my memory of his mentorship, his patient teaching, his quiet support even when we disagreed. But before I can contradict him, Michael appears, tablet in hand as usual. Sorry to interrupt, he says, but we've got the preliminary numbers from today. Thought you might want to see them before the dinner. The tablet displays analytics from both the physical event and our digital platforms, where we've been live streaming select portions of the launch. The engagement metrics are impressive, higher than our most optimistic projections, with particularly strong interest in the sustainability initiatives and the Heritage Collection. We've already received inquiries about the apprenticeship program, Michael adds, and pre-orders for the new collection are at 120% of target. This concrete validation of our approach, numbers that Susan would appreciate even if she questions our methods, feels like the perfect conclusion to the day's events. The Miller Heritage launch isn't just a symbolic success, but a measurable one. Proof that tradition and innovation can coexist profitably when approached with integrity. As the sun sets, casting golden light through the showroom windows, staff members finish their cleanup while the executive team gathers for a celebratory dinner at my home. Dad insists on walking out under his own power, his progress through. The building slow but determined. On the production floor, the night shift is already beginning their work, the rhythmic sounds of craftsmanship creating a fitting backdrop to our exit. Your mother would be proud, Dad says quietly as we reach my car. Not just of the company's success, but of how you've handled everything, the challenges, the transitions, the family complications. The mention of my mother, gone for nearly a decade now, brings a familiar ache, but it's tempered by the knowledge that I've honored her values in building Miller Heritage. Her practical wisdom and quiet strength have guided me, even in her absence. I wish she could have seen it, I reply, helping him navigate into the passenger seat. She can, he says simply, patting my hand. Through what you've created. The dinner at my home is intimate and relaxed, a stark contrast to the formal launch. Around my dining table, an original Miller piece I found at an estate sale and restored myself, gather the people who have made this transformation possible. Ryan and Michael, the key executives from both original companies, Patricia from accounting, who has become an unofficial family historian, even Jamie, who has evolved from receptionist to indispensable chief of staff. Conspicuously absent is Susan, though her presence lingers in our conversation, not as the antagonist of recent months, but as a complicated figure in our shared history. Ryan shares a brief account of their interaction after she left my office, describing a woman caught between pride and regret, unwilling to admit mistakes, yet unable to deny the evidence of success before her. She asked about the Heritage Collection, he tells me, refilling his wine glass. Specifically about Grandpa's designs, whether we're staying true to them. What did you tell her? I ask. I invited her to the workshop, he replies with a small smile. Told her she could see for herself. She said she might someday. It's a tentative bridge at best, but more than I would have thought possible 6 months ago. Perhaps in time, the family fractures can heal beyond mere business accommodation. As the evening progresses, conversation turns to the future: expansion plans, new collections, community initiatives. The vision that once existed only in my mind, then in careful business proposals, is now manifesting in tangible ways through the collective efforts of everyone around this table. Later, after the guests have departed and only my father remains, we sit on my balcony overlooking the city lights. The evening is mild, typical for Southern California in autumn, with just enough breeze to carry the scent of jasmine from the garden below. "What's next?" Dad asks, sipping the herbal tea his doctors have substituted for his former nightly whiskey. The question is deceptively simple. 6 months ago, my entire focus was on saving the family company, on proving myself capable of leading it through transition. Now, with Miller Heritage established and thriving, the horizon has expanded. Growth, but thoughtful growth, I reply after consideration. Expanding the apprenticeship program nationally, developing our sustainable supply chain to support other manufacturers, maybe even a foundation to preserve traditional craftsmanship globally. Dad nods approvingly, thinking beyond furniture. Beyond products to purpose, I agree. What Miller Heritage represents is bigger than what we sell. Your grandfather used to say something similar, Dad recalls, gazing out at the city below. He believed he wasn't just building furniture. He was creating vessels for people's lives, places where memories would form, where comfort would be found, where beauty would endure. The sentiment resonates deeply with my own vision. That's exactly what we're preserving, just adapting it for a new era. We sit in comfortable silence for a time, the weight of family history and future, responsibility balanced in perfect equilibrium. The journey that began with my humiliating dismissal from the boardroom has led to this moment of quiet certainty. Not that the path forward will be easy, but that it will be meaningful. "I have something for you," Dad says eventually, reaching into his jacket pocket. He withdraws a small wooden box similar to the one I found in his office, though this one bears a different inlay pattern, a subtle variation on the Miller oak leaf that I recognize as my grandfather's earliest makers. Mark. Inside lies a set of keys, old-fashioned, heavy brass that reflects the ambient light. "These were your grandfather's," Dad explains, "to the original workshop behind his house. I've kept it maintained all these years, though few people know it still exists." I lift the keys reverently, feeling their weight in my palm, literal keys to our family's legacy. "Why now?" "Because you've earned them," he replies simply. "Not by being perfect, but by understanding what matters, by building something worthy of his name and your own." The gift represents more than access to a physical space. It's an acknowledgement of continuity, of values preserved through evolution rather than stagnation. It's the final validation I once sought so desperately, but now receive with the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs external approval to know her worth. As we prepare to leave, Dad pauses at my door, leaning on his cane but standing straighter than he has in months. "Remember when you were about 10 and you found those architectural drawings in the attic? Your grandfather's original plans for his workshop?" I nod, the memory vivid despite the passing years. "I spent weeks trying to build a miniature version from scrap wood in the garage. It drove your mother crazy, all that sawdust in the house," Dad chuckles. "But you kept at it, even when your first attempts collapsed. You'd study what went wrong, adjust your approach, try again." "It never turned out quite right," I recall with a rueful smile. "No, but you learned the most important lesson of craftsmanship," Dad says. "That failure isn't the end. It's just part of the process." That's when I knew, Jessica. That's when I knew you'd be the one to carry this forward, no matter what obstacles appeared. The simple confidence in his assessment, not rooted in my business success or the company's rebirth, but in a child's determination decades ago, brings unexpected tears to my eyes. All the years spent seeking validation, fighting for recognition, proving my capabilities, and the answer was there all along in a father's quiet certainty. "Thank you," I say, the words inadequate for the gift of his belief. Dad embraces me, his left arm strong around my shoulders. "Build something beautiful," he whispers, "something that lasts." As his car disappears down the street, Ryan behind, the wheel having insisted on driving him home, I stand on my doorstep under the canopy of stars. The keys to the original workshop rest in my palm, connecting past to present to future in a tangible link of brass and promise. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new decisions, new opportunities to balance tradition with innovation. Susan may yet create obstacles. Competitors will certainly emerge. Market forces will continue to evolve. The path forward isn't guaranteed to be smooth. But tonight, in this moment of quiet triumph, I know with bone-deep certainty that I'm equal to whatever comes next. Not because I've proven myself to others, but because I finally understand what my grandfather knew, what my father tried to teach me, what even Susan in her misguided way was attempting to preserve, that the true measure of success isn't power or position or profit, but purpose. Miller Heritage isn't just my company now. It's my legacy to build, to nurture, to eventually pass on. Not as a burden, but as a gift, just as it was given to me. And that, perhaps, is the most meaningful victory of all. 5 years to the day. After being dismissed from that fateful board meeting, I stand at the podium accepting the Industry Leadership Award for Sustainable Manufacturing. The ballroom of the Riverside Convention Center is filled with competitors, colleagues, and craftspeople, all witnesses to the remarkable transformation of Miller Heritage. This award belongs to everyone who believed in balancing tradition with innovation, I say, the crystal trophy catching light beneath the chandeliers, to the artisans who preserve techniques that computers can't replicate, to the engineers who make sustainability practical, not just theoretical, to my family, who taught me that legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you build. From my vantage point, I can see my father beaming from the Miller Heritage table, his health now largely restored, though he walks with a permanent slight limp. Beside him sits Michael, who recently completed his doctorate in sustainable engineering, while developing our revolutionary zero-waste manufacturing system. Ryan, now married with a toddler daughter who already shows interest in woodworking, applauds with genuine pride. And in the corner, almost hidden by a decorative column, stands Susan. She arrived late and chose to remain apart from the company table, but she came. Our relationship has evolved from antagonism to cautious professional respect, though we'll never share the easy warmth I've developed with Ryan and Michael. Some bridges can be rebuilt, others simply mark where divergent paths began. After the ceremony, industry leaders crowd around with congratulations and partnership proposals. Miller Heritage has become not just a furniture manufacturer, but a movement, a proof that ethical business practices and traditional craftsmanship can thrive in the modern marketplace. Our apprenticeship program has spread to 5 cities. Our sustainable supply chain serves dozens of smaller manufacturers, and our community workshops have introduced thousands to the joy of creating something by hand. As the crowd thins, I spot Susan making her way toward the exit. On impulse, I follow, catching her in the quiet corridor outside the ballroom. "Thank you for coming," I say simply. She studies me with that analytical gaze I once found so intimidating. "The award is well-deserved. The industry has changed. Direction largely because of your influence." Coming from Susan, this practical acknowledgement means more than effusive praise would from anyone else. We will never share tearful reconciliations or holiday dinners filled with easy laughter, but we found our own equilibrium, a mutual recognition of different strengths applied toward separate paths. "You were right about one thing," I tell her. Running a business is different from running a blog. It's harder, more complex, more rewarding than I imagined. Susan's expression softens slightly. And you were right that craftsmanship still matters. That values can be profitable. She adjusts her ever-present designer watch. Your grandfather would approve of what you've built. With a brisk nod that serves as both acknowledgement and farewell, she continues toward the exit. Some wounds heal completely. Others leave permanent marks that become part of who we are. Susan's dismissal of my capabilities launched the journey that led to this moment. A catalyst I've come to appreciate, without forgiving the cruelty that accompanied it. Back in the ballroom, I find my father in conversation with the founder of a sustainable forestry initiative we've partnered with for materials sourcing. "There's my girl," he says proudly, drawing me into the discussion. Jessica has transformed not just our company, but our entire supply chain philosophy. The forestry expert nods enthusiastically. The Miller Heritage model is what we show other manufacturers. Proof that ethical sourcing creates better products and better profits. It's a family tradition, I reply. My grandfather understood that quality materials lead to quality furniture. We've just expanded the definition of quality to include environmental and social impact. Later that night, I returned to my office at Miller Heritage headquarters. The building has been transformed over the years. Solar panels on the roof, living walls in the atrium, collaborative spaces where hierarchical offices once stood. But some elements remain unchanged, honoring the foundations that support our evolution. On my desk sits a small wooden box, the first piece I ever made under my grandfather's guidance. The joints are imperfect, the finish uneven, but it represents the beginning of understanding that creating something of lasting value requires patience, skill, and vision. Inside rests the medal my father received for 30 years of industry service, alongside the antique oak leaf pendant that once belonged to my mother. I add tonight's award to this collection of milestones, not displayed prominently on walls, for visitors to admire, but kept as private reminders of the journey. From the window of my office, I can see the lights of the production floor where the night shift crafts furniture that will become part of people's homes and lives for generations. The exclusion I once felt so keenly has transformed into something I never expected. The freedom to create something authentic, something meaningful, something that honors the past while embracing the future. The company that bears my family's name now truly reflects my vision, not because I seized control, but because I earned the right to lead. As I prepare to leave, my phone lights up with a message from Ryan. Prototype for the children's collection is ready. Wait until you see what the apprentices created. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities, new problems to solve. The path forward will continue to require balance between tradition and innovation, between craftsmanship and scale, between family history and future potential. But tonight, I allow myself a moment to acknowledge how far we've come from that boardroom dismissal 5 years ago. The journey from exclusion to leadership wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving myself right. About creating something worthy of the Miller name while defining that worth on my own terms. I switch off the office lights and walk through the quiet building, past displays where heritage pieces stand proudly alongside contemporary designs. Different expressions of the same essential values: quality, integrity, purpose. My grandfather's hands-shaped wood. My father's expanded a workshop into a company. Mine have transformed that company into a movement. 3 generations, one continuous thread of creation. And now, with Ryan's daughter already showing interest in the family craft, and Michael mentoring the next generation of sustainable engineers, that thread extends toward a future limited only by imagination and will. The aunt who once dismissed me couldn't see what I would build. But perhaps that blindness was necessary. The catalyst that pushed me to prove, primarily to myself, that I was capable of more than anyone expected. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as rejection, and the strongest foundations are built on the rubble of what once seemed like failure. Up next, You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.